Hey, welcome to Life in the Leadership Lane. I'm your host, Bruce Waller, where I get to talk to leaders that are making a difference in the workplace and in our communities. What did they do to get started? And what are they doing to stay there? And oh my goodness, here we go. I'm bringing you another special guest today. As today, I'm getting to talk to Cheri Garcia. Cheri is the founder of Cornbread Hustle. She's also a keynote speaker, a whole lot more. Cornbread Hustle, they're a staffing agency for second chances, and I'm so excited to have you on the show today. Hey, Cheri, how you doing?
Good. Thanks for having me.
I whenever I start my podcast, I always like to reflect on when I met my guests. Some of the guests that come onto my show I have not met. Maybe I read their book, but for you, I want to see if you remember this. And we didn't get a chance to talk about this. I believe it was 2018, Dallas, Texas, and I saw you at a Disrupt HR Dallas event in Dallas. Do you remember that?
Well, when you say disrupt Dallas HR and you say 2018, that means I might have not even been sober yet because I got sober on Christmas Day of 2018. So that means I was on my journey to
Hmm.
thinking about quitting drinking. And so I probably had a little bit of liquid courage for that event. So it probably wasn't my best show. But
It was.
I even remember what I was wearing.
Oh, wow. I remember that event. I think Julian Placino was there. I think there were 10 presenters, and I was going to speak, but I was out of town. I was running late, and I had just spoke at the Disrupt HR in Oklahoma City. And so I went and I had some friends there and we just enjoyed. And I remember it was a moment I thought, oh man, she is really not only a good speaker, but she's doing great work. I want to follow her and get to. And since then, I've seen you speak at Dallas HR and some other events, and you're phenomenal. And I'm looking forward to getting into your story. But before we do that, would you share a brief highlight of Cornbread Hustle for those who aren't don't know Cornbread Hustle and they're listening? Share a little bit about how you serve your customers.
It's a staffing agency for second chances, meaning we help people coming out of prison, people with criminal records, or people in recovery find meaningful employment. We are the organization that stands in the gap between prison and employment. So we will go to the employer and ask them what their pain points are, what kind of talent pool they're looking for. We really work to help increase retention and reduce turnover. And so we work with the clients to form their criminal background policy and also help them understand um, maybe some myth busters is what I'll call it. So whenever I sit with the HR team, we'll go over what their biggest fears are or the type of people that they don't want to hire. And without any judgment, I just ask questions and we look at it with a lens of empathy. And then I go to the potential employee, which is the person coming out of prison, and I look at their situation. Are they off the bus line? They don't have transportation. Okay, let me look at our client who's on the bus line. Do they have a GPS monitor? Meaning, are they on a curfew where they're not allowed to do anything on Saturdays or Sundays or after 5 p.m.? If so, then I'm going to look at a client that's off the bus line that has a 7 a.m. to a 4 p.m. schedule that's set with no overtime. And so it's just us basically standing in the gap of the barriers, navigating the barriers, I should
Mhm.
say, from incarceration to employment and making it work, not just for the person we're trying to serve, but also for the company that we're working to serve. We're not a nonprofit, so we aren't casting a wide net and hoping for the best and raising money. We are going to our clients who are paying us and asking them exactly what they need while they can also do good in society.
I love that. I love all of the work you're doing, and we're going to get into all of that. But before we do that, I want to hear the Cheri Garcia story. You mentioned that you might not have been sober yet at the Disrupt HR Dallas event. I would love to hear your story and what led you to the world of leadership and helping in the space of second chance in particular.
I've done a lot of self-reflection with the different, I'm going to call it levels of sobriety
Hmm.
that I've achieved because it was kind of a stair step approach for me. When I was in high school, I tried a drug called meth, and that was my first real addiction. Like, I mean, talk about like baptism by fire. Like, I really went all in, and I got off meth after a couple of years of being addicted to it. And then I ended up getting off cocaine and then getting off Adderall. And then finally, like I said, Christmas Day of 2018, deciding that alcohol didn't have any room in my life. But before any of those bouts of addiction and things that I had to struggle with, looking back, even in elementary school, I always had a knack for leadership. And before we even knew the term influencer, I didn't even know that's what I was doing, was influencing. And so I would gather up a bunch of friends and we would make bookmarks together. And I'd say, let's go sell them door to door. And I'd come up with the price on how much we were going to sell them for. And I faced rejection at a very early age. I remember one guy opening the door and looking back, I'm like, wow, that's a mean guy because I was like in fourth grade. But I remember him saying, you want me to give you $2 for a piece of yarn? No. And so I remember going back and talking with my friend and being like, okay, so maybe we are charging too much. Let's look at what the entire bundle costs.
Hmm.
I guess that is true. It's only $1.69 for the entire bundle, but we're charging $2 just for a strand. And so I've always had it in me, and I've always wanted to bring people with me and lead. Unfortunately, in high school, I did it in a negative way and convinced some of my friends to try drugs and went down the wrong path. Even on drugs in high school, I still started my own businesses. I had a photography studio that I started while I was a senior in high school. So it's always just been part of my nature. Even though I was a great speaker, according to you, I would look back and think I wasn't. But even though you tell me I was a great speaker and I was inspiring in 2018, I look back and I know that I wasn't able to really reach my full potential and do what God was calling me to do until I got rid of the substances, because the
Hmm.
substances just got in the way of my potential. It kind of watered me down, so to speak. And I was about 3 years into Cornbread Hustle when I made that Disrupt HR speech. And I hadn't made any real money. I hadn't made any real traction. Again, because I also was trying to hold on to my old life while stepping into a new life. Yes, I was off all illegal substances, and I did know how to teach people coming out of prison how to get employment or become entrepreneurs. I still helped people. I helped God change a lot of people's lives through the work that I was doing, but I wasn't walking the walk and really letting go of old things to have all of the new. And so it wasn't until I got arrested for a DWI. I had already been, when I did that Disrupt HR speech, I had already been arrested. I just hadn't told anybody about it yet.
Hmm.
So I probably was standing up there with a lot of shame. And it wasn't until about a year into having to be on probation and have a breathalyzer in my car and seeing that I was still trying to figure out a way to drink while being on probation, that I really recognized how hard it is to
Hmm.
change and how hard it is to let go of the old you while wanting the new you. And that's when I really became a strong leader. When I had to get on probation and walk the walk, when I
Hmm.
had to really let go of all substances, not just meth, not just Adderall, not just cocaine, not just that toxic relationship. I had to eliminate everything that was numbing me out and keeping me from looking at the things that I really needed to change. And so at about 1 year sober, that's when COVID hit, and I was scared to death. I thought, oh my gosh, the virus is about to take me out, when a disease of addiction almost took me out. And so we just quickly pivoted and became a disinfecting team and got in the news for being a disinfecting team that of unlikely heroes, people who came from prison cleaning the workspaces. And HR people and business owners were like, where'd you get your employees? And I'm like, prison? Where do you get yours? And they're like, well, our employees are sitting at home making more money on unemployment.
Hmm.
Are your employees not wanting to just get unemployment? And I said, oh, well, they're not eligible. They don't have work history. They just got out of prison. And
Mm,
so that's when Cornbread Hustle took off and we got
mm,
our shot because companies were like, well, get me some of those people because we need to keep going and we need to
mm,
keep things going and we need to keep the warehouse moving. So we really had our real shot. And that's when I went from, and you probably know when we're talking temp staffing, these aren't huge numbers. It's just going to sound huge. And to me at the time, it was a big deal as an entrepreneur. But we did go from literally like $0 to 1 million that
mm,
year in revenue. And then the following year, 5 million. And that was when I really had to learn about leadership, being sober and facing all those feelings,
mm,
because it's not just the sad and bad feelings that you have to learn how to deal with. It's also really good and exciting and celebratory feelings. You have to learn how to calm your nervous system and stay balanced.
mm,
And through all that, I dealt with other things like my father passing away and becoming a caregiver. So there was a lot that I had to deal with internally while growing this company. And I think that's where real leadership happens. Everybody can be a natural, I shouldn't say everybody. We know the natural born leaders. We
mm,
see it in them. You said you saw it in me in 2018,
mm,
but I wasn't able to really become the leader that God was calling me to be until I started to die to self and
mm.
let go of the old me so I could step into the new me.
Oh my goodness, there's so much here. I've written down words like pivot and courage and faith. I mean, there's just so much. And it goes to, it's a reminder for all those listening right now. It's a reminder that you really don't know what people are going through. Like in 2018, when I saw you and you spoke, and a great speaker to me is someone that holds your attention. You held our attention. And I thought, and so I didn't think about that. And so it's just a reminder that a lot of people are going through stuff, and I love the word empathy and how you are in the gap there. I wanna ask you this. You also are an author. I love doing research when I'm researching my guests. I saw you have a workbook out on Amazon, and one of the things it said was finding your passion, finding your purpose. And I'm just curious, like I always like to ask this question, like, okay, here you are, you're on this journey now, and you've been sober for many years now, and continue to build your company. Was there a moment when you said, "Hey, I really found my lane. This is what I'm supposed to be doing"?
Somebody has brought up that workbook, and I'm glad you did because it allows me to speak on something that I've never spoke on before. So first of all, that book is no longer available
Hmm.
because when I wrote it, I was under the influence, and I wrote it in like business days. Not even, I think it was a 3-day weekend. And it had this whole idea of sobriety 90, be sober for 90 days. It was me projecting my own insecurities and challenging people to do something that I struggle to do myself. Again, like I told you, I was a natural born leader and I was helping people coming out of prison find success, but I wasn't able to get that internal peace and happiness myself. So I was selling this idea of success will fix you. With that said, I now have a 12-week starting over program that is in prisons nationwide. And the very first video of the 12-week program is called Success Will Not Fix You. And I explain in the 12-week starting over program that I had it all wrong. I thought that seeking achievement and success and validation was going to fix me. If I'm super rich, if I'm super popular, if I'm hanging out with famous people, maybe that will fix the shame. Spoiler alert, it doesn't. So it's just very interesting that you brought up that workbook. I am pursuing writing a book right now. I don't know when that will happen or how it will happen because I still feel like I'm on a journey where I'm a different person every 3 months. So I go back to the book and I'm like, change my mind. But yeah, I did write that. It was available, but now I hope nobody could ever find it or ever purchase it.
Oh my goodness. Hey, let me ask you this. I always like to, I find that high performers, such as yourself, have people around them that have just like helped them. They've encouraged them. They've inspired them. Were there, I don't know, was there anybody around you that have helped you along your journey? And if so, I'm curious what it was they helped you with.
There was a lot of people along my journey. There's today I have a lot of people that come along my journey that inspire me and fill my cup and tell me encouraging things. There's a lady who she sold her staffing agency when she was my age, and now she's the COO of a $1 billion company. And she reached out to me a few years ago via LinkedIn, and she was like, "Hey, I don't know why, but God told me to mentor you. Would you be open to that?" And I'm like, "Yes." But the people that really came along and changed my life before sobriety, it wasn't as pleasant. It was more of harsh truth. It was more of one time in high school or fresh out of high school when I was arrested and in the back of a cop car. The cop saying, "Hey, when we lined everyone up to check your IDs, you're the last person that I thought we'd arrest. Do you really want your future to look like those people that you were standing next to?" And what he meant by that is they were up for like 4 days straight and they definitely looked like they were on drugs. I didn't look that way yet because I was fresh out of high school and just starting to dabble into the drug scene. And so that was one of those harsh truths that kind of was a seed that was planted. Another time I went, whenever I was in my DWI classes, because of that DWI I had got, there was a lady teaching the class, and she said she worked with people in prisons. And she seemed so happy and so peaceful. And she said she was sober. And it just confused me that somebody who was sober, but also working with this population, had peace and happiness. And so just her example made me think differently, and it started to plant a seed. These seeds that were planted didn't work instantly. This is why it's so important that whenever we feel it on our heart to say something in front of somebody, and it's not so much holding them accountable because or shaming them, it's more of saying, for what I try to do is just say something about myself and let a seed be planted. Because every single time a seed was planted, it hurt and it stung, but it was really just an insecurity that someone came after. And one of the last ones before I got sober is somebody that I worked with was really disappointed in me for getting drunk at a work event. And I remember they were like, "Hey, the girl that showed up to that event is going to be on the front cover of a magazine one day. The girl that left that event is going to be dead or in prison." And I was like, "Whatever, shut up." Well, fast forward just a couple of years ago, I was on the front cover of a magazine. So even though at that moment in time I didn't get sober immediately, I think that was in August, it was that December that I got sober because of all those little seeds that were planted. Or if somebody messaged me on Facebook and said, "Hey, I think I saw you at the bar. I'm just reaching out to make sure you got home okay because it really looked like you were struggling to walk." And that gave me so much shame and embarrassment. So before sobriety, the people who came along and encouraged me, it kind of felt like pain and it wasn't as soft. And then after sobriety, because getting sober and going through this journey, this is the craziest part about transformation. And this is what I talk to the girls and the guys a lot in prison. I had so much more pride and ego and confidence before I was humbled. And then after getting humbled and going through this journey of self reflection and recognizing the things that I need to fix or like character defects, or just acknowledging my struggles and actually looking at my feelings, no matter how much more successful I've become or how much better my life looks, I've had to now struggle with self-worth issues and shame. And so now the people that come along in my life, it's like God sent the perfect people. Like I did need to kind of be shamed before I got on my journey, but now God sends the people that remind me who I am in Christ and tell me that it's okay for me to enjoy life, or remind me that his grace is sufficient. And so those are the seeds now that lead me more towards the life that I'm supposed to be living.
I once heard, I think it was Jim Rohn who's talked about how people change. They're either inspired or they're desperate. And it
Mm.
sounds like for you, you got to a point where you're like, hey, I've got to change. I want to ask you this question, and I thought about some questions before I brought you on, but this wasn't one of them. And as we talk here, I want to just ask you this question because there's probably some listeners right now that said, I'd like to tell my story, but where'd that courage come from? Do you remember the first time you told the story? Was it hard for you, or did it just come like, you know what, it's time to share it? Talk about that.
Separate seasons of sharing my story. The first one is kind of how Cornbread Hustle came to be. I was vice president of a PR firm at the time because I had got out of high school, successfully got off my meth addiction. And that's when I did the whole seeking achievement and validation stuff. I invented a product, got a
Mm.
patent. I worked at CBS 11 News. I ended up becoming vice president of a PR firm. It was like going up the rungs of the ladder as fast as I could. Again, that was just, I thought it would take care of the shame. It didn't, but that's why I became successful as fast as I did at a young age. So I was working at a PR firm and we worked with a lot of, I was in charge of helping build the brand of people who have built multi-million, if not billion-dollar companies. And so one of the guys that I was helping who had sold a company for a lot of money and now was just writing books and building his brand, for whatever reason, I had decided to tell him, I was like, something crazy. I think he said something to me like, man, you're so young. You've done so much. How do you have this much experience at such a young age? And I was like, you want to know something that's crazy? I think I was like eating Cheetos or something. I was like, I used to smoke meth, if you can believe that. And he was like, what? And I said, yeah, like it was really bad. A family member got me addicted to drugs and I became their drug dealer. And I completely gave up everything, college and my cheerleading team and my softball team. And he was like, man, maybe you should tell your story sometime. And I was like, nah, I don't think so. He was like, it's a good story. And I said, I just really don't think it's really going to add to my resume
Mm.
to say, hey, I used to be a drug dealer and a drug addict. Like I got away
Uh,
with not being caught. So
yeah.
why would I go out of my way to tell people about it? And
Mm.
he said, well, just think about it. And he said, but there is something called the Prison Entrepreneurship Program. And I think you would be a great volunteer for them. And I was like, whoa,
Mm.
whoa, whoa. Prison entrepreneurship? And in my mind, I was like, I can find people just like me who are seeking validation and want to achieve and find success in order. I didn't know at the time it was to cover up shame. I just was trying to hustle till my haters asked if I was hiring. I had that mentality. It was a real prideful mentality. And so I went in and I started helping people on their business plans in prison. And one by one, they started getting out and asking me for help on finding a job because they're like, okay, I
Mm.
got $50 and a bus ticket. And so I did end up telling my story for the first time ever. I started very small by going on the Steve Harvey show in front of 8 million people. So I told my, yes, I told my story for the first time on the Steve Harvey
Wow.
show.
Okay.
What motivated me to do that is remember I was a PR person.
Yeah.
And so I felt that I was using my gifts to help the prison entrepreneurship program get national television time. And so after telling my story, it was like, okay, that wasn't so bad. And it inspired a lot of people.
Yeah.
And then the second wave of telling my story was a little bit hard. They were both pretty hard because the
Yeah.
first time I had got away from anyone finding out and I'd become successful. The second time, I had already started Cornbread Hustle. I was already the CEO of Cornbread Hustle. And I went on LinkedIn. This was when I was 6 months sober. And I said to myself, I knew it. I knew there was no way I was going to make a year sober if I didn't tell the public. Like it was just my journey. It was a lot of people say not to tell everyone you're sober
Mm.
because it could mess you up. But my personality, I knew if I just kept it a secret, if nobody knows, nobody knows. So I went on LinkedIn at 6 months sober. You could go back and you could find it. And I did a selfie video telling all of LinkedIn that even though I'm the CEO of a staffing agency for second chances, I have a breathalyzer in my car
Mm,
and I'm on probation. And this has really sucked, but I'm 6 months sober and I'm
mm,
really trying to make it to a year sober. And so I started sharing, like I do selfie videos of my true raw journey. I even remember one of the videos that went viral on LinkedIn. I think it was LinkedIn viral, whatever that means.
mm-hmm.
Viral is different for every person, but it was me just sitting in the grass in workout clothes and I was just picking at the grass, not even looking at the camera. And I was telling all of LinkedIn, my life got better, but I'm sadder and I don't know why.
Mm,
And my raw, authentic videos about me discovering myself helped other people feel seen without having to let their guard down to be vulnerable. And so that's when people started messaging me, and then everything just from there. Now I
mm,
have a Tuesday morning recovery call that people come to for the last 4 years because I needed a place for all these LinkedIn
mm,
messages. Like, I can't help everyone one on one, but you can join me Tuesday mornings and
mm.
we'll talk about recovery. So
I
it's just God has just been at work the entire
mm.
time and
I have
surrendering.
chills. I have chills. I have a full page of notes here. This is, oh my goodness, this is so good. I appreciate you sharing that because I know that's going to help somebody that's listening right now. Hey, let's talk second chance hiring. Let's talk about Cornbread Hustle. What's the landscape like right now? I did notice on your website, whenever you hire someone, there is an 80% retention rate for second chance candidates. I don't know. What's the landscape like right now?
So the landscape in terms of employees for us at Cornbread Hustle, so there's been a flip. When I started the company, I didn't have enough candidates to fill jobs
Mm,
because word of mouth hasn't gotten around yet. So I had to do a lot of ads on Indeed. And on Indeed, we would put in caps background friendly or felon friendly. And that was a way that we were trying to capture new leads. Now that we've been at this for 10 years and our content is in prisons nationwide, we have way more candidates, like way,
mm,
like an embarrassing amount of candidates to where I wake up feeling like a failure every day. We
mm,
have way more candidates than we have jobs. But in terms of the landscape for jobs, so the last 3 years have been pretty horrendous for staffing agencies as a whole.
mm-hmm.
Forget being a staffing agency that only hires people with criminal backgrounds.
Mm.
Any staffing agency has had a hard time. So we've had a really hard couple of years. In fact, we we have not made money in the last couple of years. Like I told you,
Mhm.
we're a for profit, but if you looked at our numbers, you'd say, you're a nonprofit. You're not profiting anything. So it's been really difficult for us. God has provided. We haven't laid anyone off, and we've just tried to be as lean as we could. But we have, in 2 weeks, one of our clients made $1 million worth of job offers. And it's specifically what we're seeing is electricians are really high in demand right now.
Mm-hmm.
Welders, also very high in demand. So that skilled labor, there's also, of course, the entry level labor as well, right? Like warehouse picking and packing and distribution. But the skilled labor is where we're really doing well right now
Mm-hmm.
because these companies are looking for somebody that has the skills that they need that aren't going to go across the street for $1 more an hour
Mm.
after they've already spent all the resources to train them. And people with criminal records generally don't jump ship just to go get $1 more an hour because they know the barriers of getting employed. Because sometimes you can even get that job, and within the first couple of months, they fire you because they decide against the criminal record.
Mm.
And so, a lot of people coming out of prison, they just want a place that gives stability, that isn't going to fire them and is going to give them a chance despite their criminal background. We've hired a lot of times people are like, okay, well, what about violent offenders or what about sex offenders? We prefer to hire people with violent offenses, actually. They're 5 times more likely to convert.
Mm.
So, and they need the opportunity. So we actually prefer that. Not all of our clients will allow us. We have to do whatever our clients ask of us. We have some clients that say, hey, we'll take somebody that has a murder conviction, but if they have theft, no way.
Mm,
So it just depends on what their own experiences are and what they've seen at their job site. But we've actually hired even a lot of sex offenders in the last
mm,
month or so. At the end of the day, it can be a touchy subject, obviously. And I'm
yeah.
sure me even just saying that can make some of your listeners be like, whoa, sex offenders, but what kind of sex offender? It
Mm,
depends. Was
right.
it a kid? Was it a Romeo and Juliet? Right? Like it makes you get all these thoughts in your mind. And at the end of the day, I mean, it's very important that we source and vet appropriately because it is our liability. That's why we made this a for profit, because we wanted the employer to know that we're sharing the liability as well and we have skin in the game. They're our employee on our payroll. So any workers' comp claims or any unemployment claims, it's our problem. And you essentially get to try before you buy. I'm using air quotes because that's a horrible way to talk about human beings, but
Hmm.
they get to experience what it's like hiring somebody who has a criminal record with heinous crimes
Mm,
and then being like, huh, they are human and they do have the same grace that I've been given.
mm,
And they are a citizen of the United States of America and they do have to contribute and get a job. I remember when I first started Cornbread Hustle, I had a hard time hiring certain offenses. And one of my employees really challenged me. She had so much empathy and she disagreed with me. She was like, respectfully, I disagree. And I was like, excuse me? What? And she was like, I just disagree, Cheri. And I said, so you want to hire this guy that blah, blah, and I listed the horrible things that was on his record. And I was like, and you want to put our reputation at risk to hire this person. And
mm,
she was like, I just believe that everybody deserves a chance to work. That's literally it. Everyone does, like, who are we to say you don't deserve to even have a job? Like,
mm,
and that's what she said. She said, they're not in prison anymore. They need to pay their bills. Just because of what they did in the past doesn't mean that they don't deserve to work. Like, we're not giving them an award. We're not
mm.
putting them on the front cover of a magazine. We're literally just giving them an opportunity to make money to pay their light bill. And then that really changed my mindset when she put it. Like it made me think a lot. And I was like, you know what? Yes, we have a lot of ways that we minimize risk and you will, if you watch me interview people for a full day, and let's say I had 12 people come through with crimes ranging from possession of marijuana to murder, you will probably see me turn away somebody who had the possession of marijuana, but take in the person with the murder conviction, or vice versa. Like the criminal charge isn't what we look at, it's the
Mm.
character and the patterns.
I was just thinking just now when she challenged you, and then you mentioned, some of these other people that, like the police officer that said, "Hey, is this really how you want to live?" And the other person that talked about on the front of the magazine or in jail. And I thought, isn't it a blessing to have incredible people, like be surrounded by incredible people? I love that. Hey, let's talk about this 12-week starting over program that you have going on. I really want to touch on this because when I went on your website and you mentioned it earlier, I thought that was really cool. Like you're going above and beyond. You're like, hey, I just don't want to help them get a job. Now I want to really help them on their journey. Talk about that program. What's that all about?
10 years into recruiting and placing people with criminal records, I realized just what I told you that I realized in myself. Success doesn't fix you. When I saw that I was helping people go from getting their first entry level job of $10 an hour to a six-figure job, which has happened more times than I can count, and I saw them self sabotage the six-figure job. Like literally, it was like sabotage. And whenever I had things happen, like employees just be so excited for an opportunity and couldn't believe they had that opportunity, yet literally just not show up the next day. And a lot of times they'd later on reach out to me and make amends because whatever happened, they went and got help and got it going through a 12-step program, and I was on their amends list. And sometimes they'd reach out and be like, hey, I just want to say sorry. I didn't mean to stand you up. I was so appreciative. You literally changed my life. You planted seeds. I was so excited for the job, but I didn't feel like I deserved it. And I was so afraid to let you down. And I was so afraid of failure. I just couldn't take it. And that really told me that, okay, I can get people jobs all day long, but what's the point if I get them jobs and they become managers or get a promotion or become a supervisor and they relapse or self-sabotage because they don't feel like they deserve it, or
Mm,
they're dealing with a toxic relationship, or they have a blind spot. And so I created this 12-week starting over program. It's me sitting in my living room with my dogs. I introduce my dogs and everything. And I'm telling them, hey, I'm not in front of you and I'm not behind you. I'm walking with you. We're on this journey together. And what I'm going to do is process all my feelings and share with you the things that I've learned. So
mm,
you don't have to be vulnerable. And while you're in your cell, you have a friend that you can process some of this stuff with.
mm,
And so the first one is success won't fix you. Another one is the difference between guilt and shame,
mm,
and how one prompts us for change, but the other holds us back. The difference between having a boundary and walls. Boundary is good. It's like a
mm,
chain link fence. You can see them, they can see you, and you're letting them be a part of your life. A
mm,
wall is not good. You're shutting people out because of fear of disappointment, of fear of being hurt. And so I explain codependency. A lot of people coming out of prison don't even know what codependency means.
mm,
And they assume that codependency is just being in a romantic relationship where you're being taken advantage of. No, codependency is literally maybe you paid your dad's light bill because he was a drug addict and you self sacrificed while you're in high school. So now you find yourself self sacrificing to the point where you became part of a gang
mm,
and started doing things for the family that were harming you and getting you put in prison. And so I just explained some basic, what some of us take for granted as basic knowledge. It's mind blowing to people who grew up in environments where they weren't taught those things, including me. I was one of them. Like me
mm,
just now describing paying my dad's light bill because he was an addict, that was my story.
mm,
That's why I started drug dealing. That's why I became a drug addict, because my
mm,
dad happened to try drugs one day while he was at work and he
mm,
got addicted, and my dad was my hero. And so my journey of codependency, the patterns over and over and over, it wasn't so much that I kept choosing to mess up my life or that I was quote stupid. It was that I just kept returning to what's familiar, which is self-sacrificing and being in codependent relationships, whether it be a business partner, a friendship, a romantic relationship, or a family member.
mm,
That 12-week starting over program I have in Collin County, they just brought it into their facility. My
mm,
first set of girls graduate in, I think in February, the end of February. The one thing that I love them, and I have so like in Arizona, they've had the program in their prison for a couple of years. It just hits more home with it being in Collin County because that was the last place I was arrested and arrested several times there. And so it's really nice to go back to a place that I was once in an orange jumpsuit, and it's healing for me.
mm,
Tarrant County, I believe, is about to pick it up. It helps because this is where we're at. So people are coming out of jail and they have gone through our 12-week starting over program. So it's a good base. But the number one thing that I love the most about the 12-week starting over program, and it tells me that my vision was correct on what I saw for this, I really wanted people to feel like I was their friend.
mm,
And I wasn't a teacher talking down on them. I wasn't somebody saying, here's what you should do, textbook. It was me saying, this is complex and it's a lot of messy feelings and success isn't linear. Whenever I go into prison, no matter which prison, which state it is that has the 12-week starting over program, every single time the first thing somebody does is runs up to me and asks about my dog. They know my dogs' names. They love my dogs. They want to know how my dogs are doing. And that tells me that the program did what it's supposed to do.
I love that. And I would imagine people that are part of that also love your genuineness. And I love how you talk about I'm walking with you on this journey, and I get it. Man, this is like I have so much like I was sitting here writing down boundaries and walls, and like it's not just second people that've been incarcerated. Everybody needs that, by the way. And so this is so good. Man, we could go on all day on this. I do want to ask you this question before we get to the last part, and that is for those who are listening. There's a lot of business leaders listening in different areas, many in HR. They're listening. I'm wondering, do you have any, like, I don't know, any advice or tips or something you would share around second chance hiring, something they should know, or maybe encourage them some way in some way to check it out?
The next time you're presented with an opportunity to give somebody a second chance, and that first feeling you get of heck no, or that tingling sensation you get in your body, that flight or fight, that fear, pause and get curious about that fear and where it's coming from and what the root of that fear is. Maybe it's your own lived experience. I always tell people to just say, what if, and start doing a what if exercise.
Hmm.
What if they got addicted to drugs in high school? What if their parents went to prison because the DEA kicked in their door when they were 5 years old? What if they also struggle with anxiety like I do? And I could simply just, instead of ignoring their resume, reach out and offer a mock interview and not promise anything, but say, I know that you're on a journey and you're trying to get a job, so let me at least mentor you. And what if helping somebody else, even if it's not by way of getting them a job, helps heal me?
Hmm.
Because it does. And that's how God works. Without community, we can't really heal. So sometimes whenever we're helping other people through their struggles, it's healing a part in us that's a trigger that is holding us back from our true potential.
Without community, we can't really heal. I just wrote that down. This is so good. I love that. I just recently posted a video for some of the marketing I'm doing, and I talk about the importance of giving hope. And hope is about helping other people every day. We can all do that. We can all give hope. And I think that's what you're doing. You're giving hope. And man, this is so good. I cannot wait to share this with others. Hey, I want to shift over here to it's time to accelerate. I want to ask you just a few kind of some fun questions. First question I want to ask you as a leader, continuing to develop yourself. I don't know, do you listen to any podcasts or do you read books? Any favorites that come to mind?
Yes, I wish I would do less of that though, because I need to work on resting and not constantly trying to be productive. But I'm really loving Mel Robbins
Oh,
lately. Her
hmm,
book, Let Them, is really
yes.
great. And her podcast is
Mm,
great. I read a lot of, I guess you'd call it self-help books, but
mm,
Christian self-help.
mm,
So right now for a third time, because this book has really helped me a lot, because at the root of a lot of the things that I went through is anxiety. I
mm,
do have generalized anxiety disorder pretty badly and PTSD. So I have to manage that. So
mm,
Battlefield of the Mind
mm.
by Joyce Meyer. It is a Christian book. It's a book I can read every single year, once a year. So yeah, I'm constantly reading books and listening to podcasts. I love Brene Brown. I love Sarah Blakely. I love Jamie Lee Kern. I have a lot of women that I look up to.
You mentioned Sarah Blakely. One thing that comes to, I'm a big fan of hers too. And she says, the more you experience, the more you can help others.
Mhm.
And that's what you've done. You've experienced a lot, and now you're taking that and helping others along the way. I love that. I do want to ask you this. You're doing some great work. What are you most proud of?
It's a twofold because the very first thing that came to mind was sobriety because
Mm,
that was so hard to give up.
yeah.
It was like my blankie that I literally couldn't, I didn't want to give up. It was my comfort. Even though it was like a backstabbing friend.
Mm,
But then I would say really being on this journey to surrendering to God and allowing God to conform me and my plans fitting into God instead of me trying to fit God into my plans. That has definitely been a journey. So this past year, I feel like I'm in my first year of sobriety again, which is not a fun place to be.
mm,
I had also gotten a relationship that is a serious relationship, and that's caused me to have to go through a lot of feelings of the whole trust and
Mm,
fear of disappointment and all of that. And that's a new thing that I have to talk to the women about in prison. I'm like, oh, also, by the way, if you meet a healthy guy, and get ready. I would just say, all in all, I'm most proud of my journey of becoming more like Christ. And even though my pride and ego and the desires I have in this world really make me want to be like, well, but is that part really that important? I'm working really hard to die to self. And that ego death is, there's a grieving process to it. So I'm
mm,
proud of that. And getting sober is part of that dying to
mm,
self and ego death. Again, it's a stair
mm,
step approach, like my
mm,
sobriety was. It was like, okay, now let me give up alcohol. Okay,
mm,
now let me learn about codependency. Oh,
mm,
okay, now let me learn about toxic relationships.
mm,
And so it's just constant. Now I'm learning all about trust,
mm,
and that control is something that I've worshipped, and I need to let go of that now
mm.
too. So I would say that if anybody comes on your podcast and acts like they have it all figured out, then they might have a very disruptive blind spot that's fixing to get them.
Mm. I'm so proud of you. You're doing, this is so good. Hey, oh, okay, here's my last question. It's probably my favorite question I like to ask all of my guests. And that is, Cheri, 10 years older, is around the corner and she's knocking at your door. And you're going to go answer that door. What's she going to tell you?
I hope that she's able to say, I'm proud of you for being softer with yourself. Keep
Hmm.
doing that. What I'm doing right now is going back to my inner child and nurturing her. So I guess ten years older Cheri would come back to nurture me. Hopefully, she reminds me that my worth is not in my work
Hmm.
and I'm enough.
I love that. I wrote the book Drive with Purpose, and the subtitle of that is Move Your Career from Success to Significance. And I think that's what I hope that people will get to what you just said is that success is about achievement, but significance is about impact. It's just so much more rewarding. And so I love that. I've loved having you on the show today. Thank you for coming on, just sharing your wisdom, your perspective. Somebody heard you today. They said, "Man, I want to connect with Cheri, or I want to get to know Cheri, or I want to follow Cheri." What is the best way for them to connect? And I'll put that in the show notes.
The easiest way to remember is just cornbreadhustle.com
Mm,
and just contact us there. It'll get to me. We read all the contact submission forms.
I love that. I'll put that in the show notes. And again, I'm so grateful for you coming on, sharing your story, and just reconnecting with you. And I can't wait to watch your journey ahead. You're doing great work, and I know that a lot of people are going to get a lot out of the podcast. So thanks again for coming on, Cheri.
Thank you so much, Bruce.
I love it. Okay, I'll talk to you later.